Shalom. Welcome to Beth Yeshua Messianic Synagogue. This is our midweek study session. We're going through the Torah, studying the Torah parshat by parshat, working our way through, for the most part, for the annual cycle. This week we are at parshat 46, Ekev, because it is found in Devarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 7, verse 12, through chapter 11, verse 25. Before we begin, a couple of comments. If you have any comments or discussion, would like to reach out to me, you'll find my email address is listed in the comments below, the description below for this video. If you want to join us for services, our services are on Shabbat at 11 a.m. We do have in-person services. We have plenty of seating. It's a good group, so I would enjoy meeting any of you that would like to come. And then lastly, if you would like to support this ministry is wholly supported by your tithes and gifts and love offerings. So if you would like to join us and join this ministry in that, we would be grateful. And of course, you can find a link to that in the description below. For those who have joined us and have supported this ministry, I'm just incredibly grateful for your partnership with us in the work of the kingdom and the work of the gospel, and so just thank you very much. It's very much a blessing to us that people out there who understand this vision and understand the work that we're doing and want to join in it to that degree. So by all means, reach out to me and let me know that you're out there. I would love to meet all of you via email or phone call, and sometimes we have telephone discussions and dialogues. Yes, just looking forward to all these things. Okay, without further delay and rambling by myself, let's get to the topic. This week, summary, if Bnei Israel, children of Israel, are careful to observe even these minor mitzvot that are usually trampled underfoot, Moses promises them that they will be the most blessed of the nations of the earth. Moses tells the children of Israel that if they will conquer Eretz, Canaan, the land of Canaan, little by little, so that the land will not be overrun by wild animals in the hiatus before Bnei Israel are able to organize and settle the whole land. After again warning the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, to burn all the carved idols of the Canaanite gods, Moses stresses that the Torah is indivisible and not open to partial observance. Moses describes the land of Israel as a land of wheat, barley, grapes, figs, and pomegranates, a land of oil-yielding olives and date honey. Moses cautions the people of Israel not to become haughty or to think that what they will have done is as a result of their own power or their own strength. Rather, they must always remember that it was Adonai who gave them wealth and success. Nor did Adonai drive out the Canaanites because of the righteousness of Bnei Israel, but rather because of the sins of the Canaanites. For the road from Sinai has been a catalogue of large and small sins and rebellions against Adonai and Moses. Moses details the events after Adonai spoke the Ten Commandments at Sinai, culminating in his bringing down the second set of tablets on Yom Kippur. Aaron's passing is recorded together with the elevation of the Levites to minister to Adonai. Moses points out that the 70 souls that went down to Egypt have now become like the stars of the heaven for their abundance. After specifying the great virtues of the land of Israel, Moses speaks to the second paragraph of the Shema, which conceptualizes the reward for keeping the mitzvot and the penalty for not keeping them. Summary this week, courtesy of Or Sameach International. Consider using a Torah summary when you begin your study. You can read the portion, read the summary, and then go where Adonai leads you. All right, so let's begin with the first verse of the parsha, verse 12. Vehaya Ekev, which is because. Ekev tishme'un et hamishpatim ha'ela ushmartem va'asitem otam v'shamar Adonai Elohecha lecha et havrit ve'et hachased asher nishba la'avotecha. Ekev, because, in consequence of the fact. Other usages in the Torah where we see this, Ekev, after the Akedah with Abraham and Isaac, when Abraham took Isaac up onto the mountain. Genesis chapter 22, verse 15, the angel of Adonai called to Abraham a second time out of heaven, and he said, I have sworn by myself, says Adonai, that because you have done this, because you haven't withheld your son, your only son, I will most certainly bless you, and I will most certainly increase your descendants to as many as there are stars in the sky or grains of sand on the seashore. Your descendants will possess the cities of their enemies, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed, because you obeyed my order. There's because. Later, the famine is prepared to go down to Egypt. Adonai says to him, Genesis chapter 26, verse 2, Adonai appeared to him and said, don't go down to Egypt, live where I tell you, stay in this land, I'll be with you to bless you. And then skipping down, it says, I'll make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give all these lands to your descendants, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth will bless themselves. All this is because, again, that's that because Abraham heeded what I said and did what I told him. These are different instances of this because concept. After the episode of the spies, Numbers chapter 14, verse 21, as sure as I live, the whole earth is filled with the glory of Adonai. None of the people who saw my glory and the signs I did in Egypt and in the desert, yet tested me these 10 times, and did not listen with my voice, will see the land. But my servant Caleb, because he had a different spirit with him, and has fully followed me. Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 7, because you are listening to these rulings, keeping and obeying them, Adonai your God will keep you with the covenant and mercy that he swore to your ancestors. He will love you, bless you, and increase your numbers. He will also bless the fruit of your body and the fruit of your ground, your grain, wine, olive oil, and the young of your cattle and sheep in the land he swore to your ancestors that he would give you. You will be blessed more than all the other peoples. But why will you be blessed more than all the other peoples? Deuteronomy 7, verse 12, because you are listening to these rulings, keeping and obeying them. These are all usages of the word Ekev in the entire Torah. Every single usage in the Torah is in the context of a sort of conditional promise to Adonai, and a promise that is a reward for faithfulness. In other places, the Torah, we read of what will happen if Israel does not keep the commandments. The curses and the rejection of Adonai will follow. So what are we talking about here? Are these conditional? Is Adonai setting up a conditional blessing and love for Israel? Do they have to earn the rewards of Adonai? Is that what this is, a form of conditionality or conditional love from Adonai? Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 10, go to verse 12. So now Israel, all that Adonai your God asks from you is to fear Adonai your God. Follow all his ways, love him and serve Adonai your God with all your heart and all your being. Obey good and regulations of Adonai which I am giving you today. All that Adonai asks from you is this little paragraph. In Hebrew, Ve'ata Israel ma Adonai Elohecha sho'el mi imach ki'im. There is that ki'im. Ki'im le'yira et Adonai Elohecha lalachet b'chol derchav. Ule ahava, to love, oto ve'la'avod, in the service, at Adonai Elohecha, Adonai Elohim, bechol levavcha, uvechol nefshecha, with all your heart and with all your soul. Bechol levavcha, uvechol nefshecha, all your heart and all your soul. But we have this ki'im, accept, but for accept, or accept, but accept. In other words, this is the exception, or this is the only, but for this only, if you will. Ki'im, im. And we have this in Psalm 127, Psalm 121. Im Hashem lo yivnei bayit. And this, of course, has been popularized into a song. I don't remember who first did this song, but Im Hashem lo yivnei bayit, shavam lo bon avoy, Im Hashem lo rishmarir, shav shavchat shomer, and so on and so forth. Many of you probably recognize that song. And then it follows up, Hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Israel. He who watches over Israel never slumber nor sleep. But what it says before that, Im Hashem lo yivnei bayit, unless the Lord builds this house. Shavam lu von of boy, the builders who build it labor in vain. And then from Psalm 127, Im Hashem lo yishmaria, unless the Lord watches over the city, shevshachat shomer, the guards who watch it stand in vain. That's this unless or except. Another place we see the ki'im, except, another famous commentary on this sort of interaction between man and God and what God expects of man, is this reference from Micah 6. And it says this, with what can I come before Adonai? To bow down before God on high. And this is the introduction of this section of Scripture. He's asking the question legitimately, what do I do to come before Adonai? Should I come to him with burnt offerings? Shall I bring an offering? With calves in their first year? Would Adonai take delight in thousands of rams? With 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Could I give my firstborn to pay for my crimes, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? So what's happening here is that the person speaking is saying, what can I bring before Adonai? Do I bow down to him? Do I bring him a burnt offering? Do I bring him calves? Calves would be greater than a burnt offering. Would he take delight in 1,000 rams or 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Or can I give my firstborn? So he's giving more and more and more, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul. Finally, he says this, verse 8, and this again is of chapter 6 of Micah. Human being, you have already been told what is good, what Adonai demands of you, no more than to act justly, love grace, and to walk in purity with your God. That's the complete Jewish Bible translation. Hagid lecha adama tov uma Adonai doresh mimecha ki'im. And there's the ki'im, right? No more than is what it says here in the complete Jewish Bible. This ki'im we see repeated. He has shown you, O man, what is good and what is required, but to do, except to do. Ki'im. Asot mishpat ve'avat chesed levatznea lechet im Elohecha. To act with justice, mishpat, justice, to love mercy, ve'ahavat chesed, ava, love, chesed, kindness, mercy, and then vahatznea, to walk leket im Elohecha, to walk in purity or humility before Adonai your God. Here the translation says no more, giving us the impression that the previous list of things doesn't matter. In other words, does it matter that I bring a burnt offering? Does it matter that I bring calves in their first year? And we would think that this is an exception, that this changes direction. But rather, the previous context shows the nature of trying to please Adonai. This is the expression, the spontaneous expression, the heartfelt expression of a man who does want to come before Adonai and wants to bless Adonai. What does it say that you shall never appear before Adonai empty-handed? That comes from Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 16. So it's appropriate that the man says, what do I do when I come before Adonai? With what can I bring? And so forth. Remembering the temple-centric or tabernacle-centric approach to Adonai was always to bring a gift, to always bring a sacrifice. And now our sacrifice is our praises, our prayers, and our love offerings that we give to each other and to the community for the building up of the gospel. So this is in the context of Micah 6, that it is set that you are to practice justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. This ki'im, except this. So this is kind of the setting here. Let's go to Matthew chapter 23. Yeshua addressed the crowds in his Talmudim. The Torah teachers and the Perishim, he said, sit in the seat of Moshe. So whatever they tell you to do, take care to do it. But don't do what they do, because they talk but don't act. They tie heavy loads onto people's shoulders but won't lift a finger to help them. Everything they do is done to be seen by others, for they make it their tefillin broad and their tzitziot long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the best seats in the synagogues, and they love being greeted deferentially in the marketplaces and being called rabbi. You are not to let yourselves be called rabbi, because you have one rabbi, and you are all each other's brothers. Do not call anyone on earth Father, because you have one Father, and He is one. Or you shall be called leaders, because you have one leader, and He is the Messiah. The greatest among you must be your servant. For whoever promotes himself will be humbled. Whoever humbles himself will be promoted. Continuing on, verse 13 from Matthew chapter 23. And now we enter the woes. Woe to you, hypocritical Torah teachers and Pedashim, for you are shutting the kingdom of heaven in people's faces, neither entering yourselves, nor allowing those who wish to enter to do so. Verse 15, woe to you, hypocritical Torah teachers and Pedashim, you go about over land and sea to make one proselyte, and when you succeed, you make him twice as fit for Gehinnom as you are. Incidentally, proselyte be a convert, and it could either be a convert from Judaism to whatever their sort of school of thought was, whatever their sect was. There were the Pharisees and Sadducees and the Essenes and Zealots and these sort of things. So it could be that we're talking proselytes, but it could also be going over land and sea to make one proselyte. Could be that that there were some who were bringing new converts into Judaism from the nations. Woe to you, blind guides, verse 16. You say, if someone swears by the temple, he is not bound by his oath. But if he swears by the gold in the temple, he is bound. You blind fools. Which is more important, the gold or the temple which makes the gold holy? You say, if someone swears by the altar, he is not bound by his oath. But if he swears by the offering on the altar, he is bound. So what we're seeing here is that we're seeing the corruption that was bound up in the Torah teachers. Woe to you, hypocritical Torah teachers, verse 23, in the Pedashim, you pay your tithes of mint, dill, and cumin, but you've neglected the weightier matters of Torah, justice, mercy, and trust. And do you see that? Justice, mercy, and trust. From verse 23. And what did we see out of Micah 6? What is it that Adonai asks? No more than to act justly, love grace, and to walk in purity, or walk in humility. What does it take to walk in humility? But to walk in trust. Let's see. Neglecting the weightier matters of Torah, justice, mercy, and trust. These are the things you should have attended to. And then he says this, Yeshua says, without neglecting the others. In other words, you should have attended to justice, mercy, and trust without neglecting the tithes of mint, dill, and cumin, and all the rest. Woe to you, hypocritical Torah teachers and Pedashim! You clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside they are full of robbery and self-indulgence. And what he's speaking here of is of their cleaning methods, but that inside the dish would still be dirty, and that's a metaphor for the Pedashim. Blind Perushim, or Pharisee. First clean the inside of the cup, so that the outside of the cup may be clean too. Woe to you, hypocritical Torah teachers and Pedashim! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look fine on the outside, but inside are full of dead people's bones and all kinds of rottenness. Likewise, you appear to people from the outside to be good and honest, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and far from Torah. Woe to you, hypocritical Torah teachers and Pedashim! You build tombs for the prophets and decorate the graves of the tzaddikim, the righteous, but you say, had we lived when our fathers did, we would never have taken part in killing the prophets. In this you testify against yourselves that you are worthy descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Go ahead then, finish what your father started. And speaking of the fact that they were going to put him to death presently. You snakes, sons of snakes, how can you escape being condemned to Gehinnom? Therefore I am sending you prophets and sages and Torah teachers. This is complete Jewish Bible translation. I am sending you prophets and sages and Torah teachers. Verse 34, some of them you will kill. Indeed, some of them you will have executed on stakes as criminals. Some of them you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town. And then he says this, Yerushalayim, verse 37, you kill the prophets, you stone those who are sent to you. How often I wanted to gather your children, just as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you refuse. Look, God is abandoning your house to you, leaving it desolate. For I tell you, from now on, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of Adonai. So, in this chapter of woes, woe to the Torah teachers, woe to the Torah teachers in Pedashim, woe to the blind guides. In the middle of this, we have this, you have neglected the weightier matters of Torah, justice, mercy, and trust, from verse 23, referencing the weightier matters of Torah from Micah 6. These are the lessons of Torah. These are the disciplined paths. the haderech, the way. But look at the end of this. After all things, Yeshua says this, I will send you prophets, sages, and Torah teachers. What is happening here? And look back at the beginning of this. Yeshua addressed the crowds in his Talmudim. The Torah teachers and the Perushim, he said, sit in the seat of Moses. In other words, there would be a seat in the synagogue, or a teaching seat. And they would sit in the seat of Moses, and they would teach from that seat. He says they sit in the seat of Moses. That's a seat of respect. It's a seat of honor. So, verse 3, it says, so whatever they tell you to do, take care to do it. In other words, these Torah teachers are corrupt in what they do, but they were teachers of the law, and they spent a great deal of time trying to properly understand the law, the Torah, and understanding, of course, the Nevi'im as well. So this is kind of the takeaway of this, that the contextualizing of Micah 6 is being referenced here by Yeshua in this verse 23, where he says, they have neglected the weightier matters of Torah, justice, mercy, and trust, trusting Adonai in order to walk humbly with Adonai. Yeshua is contextualizing that, but it is to the people and to the Talmudim, it is within the context of them honoring the Perushim and doing what they tell them to do. Don't do what they do because they talk and don't act, but do what they teach. What they do is corrupt. They say things, but they don't do what they say. So you are to take care to do exactly what they tell you to do. And then it says this, at the end of this passage, Yeshua says this, therefore, because of all these things, therefore I'm sending you prophets, sages, and Torah teachers. So therefore is referring to, first of all, that the Perushim sit in the seat of Moses, that you are to listen to what they teach you. The therefore is because the woe that has come upon all these corrupt teachers that renders them irrelevant, and they need and Yeshua needs to send new prophets, new sages, and new Torah teachers. And indeed, some of them are going to be killed, some of them will be executed, some of them flogged in synagogues and pursued from town to town. These are the lessons of Torah. This is the path that is being offered to us, that is even being offered to us in the presentation of Yeshua here in this passage, in this section. And again, we've got this translation of the Ki'im coming out of Micah chapter 6. But to do justly, to love mercy and chesed, and to walk humbly with Adonai. Let's look at it again, just one more time. Ki'im, but for asot mishpat, to do justly, or to act with justice. Remember, mishpatim, judges. Mishpat is to judge. Remember, justice is required in the earth in order to give a proper testimony of Adonai. But this is followed up with ve'avad, which is to love. It's justice is something that you do, but the expression of your heart, the love of your heart, is in kindness. And kindness is always dispensed with almost affection, with love. So that's why we have the ve'avat. Chesed, ve'avat chesed. You can't have justice without kindness, because mercy triumphs over judgment. And so you have to graduate from justice to kindness. And then ve'hatznea lechet im Elohecha, to walk humbly with your God, to walk in humility before God. We begin learning the laws of God. We begin learning the truths of God in this way, and then we come to a place of maturity in loving Adonai even through these laws and commandments, and finding the chesed within the laws and commandments. So it's no longer justice that causes me to give to the widow and the foreigner and the poor. It's now an expression of love, first to Adonai and then to the neighbor, the poor neighbor. In that sense, the mishpat is graduated into chesed. The justice is graduated into kindness. And then it says, Ve'atznea lechet im Elohecha, to walk humbly with our God. The humility that comes out of this, in knowing Adonai, and knowing that we are his representatives here on the earth, that he has given it to us to do justice. He has given it to us to love mercy and kindness. We are his, as some of the songs say, we are his hands and feet. Another one, Good Works out of Athens, Ohio, a ministry to the poor. They say in some of their communications, their letters, love is a verb. And I like that. It might be that that they coined that phrase. I don't know. But Keith Wasserman may have coined that phrase. I don't know. But if he did, it's a great phrase. Love is a verb. Chesed, it requires me to act on behalf of the poor and the widow and the orphan. But that action is as an emissary and as a person of God, a messenger of God to all the earth. And so we find ourselves that the Torah is being represented here as the highest form of kindness and the highest form of justice, and is being represented here, given to us here, as the way to demonstrate those things in all the earth. And so it takes a great deal of humility to accept that burden and accept that place. So I will leave that with you for this week. If you have any comments or questions, please reach out to us with your comments and your questions. May Adonai bless you this week. As always, it's just a delight to be with you.